Welcome to my podcast, Today's Dream, Tomorrow's Reality. My name is Vicki Poole, and I'm a master transformational coach and hypnotist specializing in habit change. And this podcast is sponsored by the Enlightened Peach. And this podcast is all about embracing our mosaic life. And some of you may ask, what is a mosaic life anyway? It is recognizing that all the pieces of our life, the good, the bad, the indifferent, have all come together to make us who we are. Change any one thing and we are different. With that in mind, I invite you to embrace your perceived imperfections and celebrate who you are. This podcast is unedited and raw, just like life. And I am your host. And today I have a special guest that I will introduce in just a moment. And I would love for you to leave a comment and remember to like, subscribe, and share. So now let's get started. So, Sean, I would love to welcome you to my podcast. And just for the guest, I would like to say we know each other from being in a joint venture group together where we're learning different things about business and so much more. And so that's how I know him. And I'll be honest, I know little bits and pieces of his story from us being in the same group, but I don't know a lot of it. And I was just telling him, I purposely did not watch any podcast he's been on or anything because I wanted to open up that box and kind of discover things and get surprised right along with all of you. So with that, welcome, Sean.
Oh, no, thanks for having me, Vicki. This is awesome.
Perfect. So what I want to ask is if you would just tell just a little blip of what you do and how you came, because you have got such an amazing story from what I know. And I kind of want to dig in from there. So I'll let you start telling everybody who you are, and then I will just ask questions. And I will be honest, I'll probably interrupt you a few times. So just bear with me.
Okay, great, fantastic. Well, thank you for this opportunity. I will say that my big claim to fame, the one thing that always kind of sticks out in people's minds is that when I turned 40 years old, like 2 days before I turned 40 years old, I was kind of reflecting on the fact that I was about to turn 40 and thinking about my life, which we often do when we have those landmark birthdays. And I realized that I had never taken not one step or one motion towards what a lifelong dream I'd had since I was a kid. When I was a kid, I had always dreamt of having my own television show. But here I was about to turn 40. I had never done anything towards it. I'd never been in community theater. I'd never been on an audition. I'd never taken an acting class. I knew nothing about the television industry whatsoever. I was managing a newspaper in San Diego at the time, the San Diego Reader, which was the fifth largest weekly newspaper, and I was their advertising sales manager. And I had never done anything to go pursue my dreams in television. So 2 days later, at my birthday party, I announced to my friends and family that I was going to have my own television show, and it was going to be a worldwide hit. And my friends were just blown away. They're like, "Wow, that's amazing, Sean." They're like, what channel is it going to be on? I'm like, "Oh, I don't know." And they're like, "Well, what's it going to be called?" I'm like, "Oh, I don't know the name yet." And they're like, "Well, what's it about?" I'm like, I don't know yet." And they're like, "What? What do you mean you don't know yet?" They're like, "Wait a minute, is this more like a dream, a wish?" And they all kind of started to laugh. And to my wife's credit, who had seen me reinvent myself multiple times and knew that I had like a little formula for doing it, she goes, actually, she goes, "If it's a TV show that you want, I know you're going to get it." And 9 months later, I had created, sold, and I was starring on my own television show on True TV, which lasted for 6 seasons. It then began airing on the Discovery Channel worldwide in 127 countries, where it became a large hit in the UK. After it stopped airing in the United States, my wife and I moved to London, where I filmed it for a BBC-owned channel called Dave for another 6 seasons. So in total, I spent 12 seasons on television. Also created in addition to the British version, I also created a British celebrity version where I had British celebrities come on my show, and had over 130 British celebrities come onto my television show that I was the host of. And I lived my dream, and it was incredible. And so now what I've done is I've created this group called Do the Big Dream. And you can, I set up a little website where you can read more about it, but it's dothebigdream.com. And I decided that I want to try to teach my formula on how to go out and go achieve your gigantic, that impossible dream, that thing that you're almost afraid to admit to yourself because it seems so crazy. You would seem like a lunatic if you told people you wanted to do it, but it's something you've always wanted to try to accomplish. And I want to teach people the formula that it takes to get there, and the skill set that it takes to do it. And you know, I mean, look at me. I mean, saying that my birthday party, my 40th birthday party to all my friends and family, without even knowing how I was going to do it, just saying, "Hey guys, I'm going to have my own TV show. And it's going to be a worldwide hit." I mean, that's crazy. And
Yeah.
and people laugh for good reason, because when someone says something like that, you go, "Okay, you're having a midlife crisis."
Yeah.
But I did it, and I know that I can help other people, because one of the things, Vicky, is that after I did that and some other things, I actually had some opportunities to coach a few different people. And some people reached out to me, some friends and stuff. They're like, "Whoa, dude, can you teach me? How did you, you know?" And so, like, there was a young man who I met him when he was a senior at university in San Diego. This guy walks into, I had a comedy club at the time, and he walks in and asks if he can audition. I let him. He was not very good as a comedian. Matter of fact, he was really bad. But there was just something special about this young man. So I asked him to sit down at a table with me, and I asked him questions about his life. And I go, "Tell me your story, dude." I go, "What's going on with you?" And he goes, "Well," I go, "Why do you speak the way you speak?" He goes, "Well, I moved to America when I was 13 from Hong Kong, and I didn't speak a word of English. So I learned to speak English by watching Yo MTV Raps and Rap City." I go, "Oh, that explains why you're Chinese, but you sound like you're a rapper." I go, "This is awesome." I go, "You talk about your real life on stage, and I'll give you all the stage time you want. Eventually, you could write a book about your life. Eventually, you could move to LA, get on TV, movies, all that stuff. I'm happy to help you if you'll do that." And to this day, his name is Jimmy O Yang. He's a big star. He has two comedy specials on Amazon. He's got movies that he did, Crazy Rich Asians, and he's done about 30 movies now. He's been on the TV show Space Force, and it all started with him sitting down with me at the comedy club that day, and then me becoming his mentor. Well, he did a Google talk in front of the Google employees, like thousands of Google employees, and he wrote the book that I told him he was going to write. It's called How to American: An Immigrant's Guide to Disappointing Your Parents. So the interviewer says, "Hey, in your book, you mentioned The Godfather. Who's this Sean Kelly character?" And he goes, "Oh, Sean." He goes, "He's my mentor. He's the one that got me into show business." Well, from there, I started getting like inquiries from strangers going, "Hey, you helped Jimmy. Can you help me?" And I
Perfect.
resisted for a long time. And then I realized, there's no greater sense of giving back to the world and feeling good about yourself than to help others go and achieve what they think is impossible. And
Yeah, I
so that's
agree.
kind of what I'm doing now. So anyway, Vicky,
Yeah,
thank you for having me come on here and giving me this opportunity to share about my background, my story.
my pleasure. Well, I want to go way back from there. I want
Yeah.
to go back to when you said that you were a young child and you knew that that was something that you wanted to do. So, what was going on at that time in your life that had you even thinking about that?
Yeah, I can tell you, I can remember when it all happened. I remember my parents were separated, and my mom was working full time, and it was probably I was probably about 7, 8 years old, and I would get left alone at home all day long, and the TV was my babysitter.
Right.
And I remember watching the Andy Griffith show, and I remember watching little what was the little
Opie.
character?
With
Opie, and I
Opie.
would
Yeah.
watch Opie, and he and I were similar age, or at least when I was watching it, and he's on there, right? And I remember thinking, "Oh, I want to do what he's doing. I want to be on TV." And that's kind of when it first. That's when it first like kind of got stuck in my head that I would love to do that. But then, I mean, how do you ever do that? And shortly after that, 2 years later, we moved to Germany, and so,
Just
living
you and
in
your
Germany,
mom?
like, No, my parents got back together for a little
Okay.
while. We moved to Germany. My father was an American, he was a life insurance salesman, and he sold insurance to American GI station in Germany. My father read lots of Hemingway, and he had these fantasies of living in Europe. My father never attended university, had no real like had no real career, but he had kind of fallen into sales, was selling insurance, and he found out this little niche how he could move to Germany and sell life insurance to GIs. And he thought, oh, this is my chance to move to Europe. So we went there on a 90-day tourist visa, and we stayed for 9 years as
Oh,
illegal
wow.
alien. Yeah, we
So what's
weren't.
your favorite memory of being there? I know you were young, but what's your favorite memory?
Oh, my favorite memory of, well, so I lived there from the time that I was 11 or 10 until I was like 18. And so
Okay.
yeah, so I pretty much, I grew up there.
Yeah.
Some of my favorite memories was my father was extremely adventurous. And so we would live paycheck to paycheck. It was kind of like feast or famine. If he
Hmm.
sold life insurance, we got him commission checks. And if he didn't, sometimes we didn't know if like the electricity was going to get shut off or the water or whatever. But when he did have checks, what he would do is he would take my mom and I and get us in the car, and he would say, okay, we're going to go on a road trip until the money runs out.
Oh,
And we would
wow.
drive all over Europe, and we would go to and stay in these bed and breakfasts. And in the US, a bed and breakfast is expensive. In like Germany or Austria or Switzerland, they call them Zimmerfrei, which just means free, like available room. And so you literally are renting a room in someone's house, and they feed you breakfast the next morning. And usually it's very inexpensive. In those days, we could do it for 20 marks a night, which the exchange rate was 4 marks to the dollar. So for $5, you could stay in someone's house. It was an incredible.
Nice. Yeah.
So we would get in the car and we would just travel around Europe. And my dad would pull me out of school. And sometimes those road trips would last for like a week, or sometimes they would last for a month or a month and a half. It depended on how much money he'd made. And then when we ran out, we would go home and start all over again. And those were some of my best memories, because my dad was always very fascinated about how things were made. So as a kid, we would always go on like factory tours. We would go and see them, blowing glass, making glasses, or go where they're making dishes, or go watch them making cars, or, across Europe, they have all these incredible factories. And then my dad was also fascinated by um, castles and museums and all of that, or cathedrals. So we did them all. We did all the cathedrals, all the castles. We did all of the going to all these little factories. And then my dad was really curious about like how certain things are made, like wine and beer and all this. So he arranged for me to have internships when I was like 13. He got me an internship at a winery on the
Oh my
Mosel River,
gosh.
where I ended up helping them. There was an early freeze, and I helped them make an ice wine. He got me, when I was 14, an internship at the Hinterger beer company in Frankfurt, Germany, where I learned to brew beer. So he was always pushing like really adventurous, cool stuff. And he was a real character. And as a result of that, I had one of the most unusual upbringings. I also was responsible for helping the family make money. My dad wasn't allowed to go and solicit in the housing areas in Germany. So he would send me into the US Army housing areas with lead cards and make me go knock on doors to get leads filled out for him to be able to sell life insurance. And
So
actually,
how did you feel when you were doing that?
oh, okay. I will say this. Okay. It was the most frightening, horrible thing ever. And it led to what I like to call my superpower. And
Yeah.
I'll tell you what that is.
Most
Here's
of
what
our really big challenges, that's what it does create, is our
yeah,
superpower.
my superpower is I have zero, and when I say zero, I mean zero fear of rejection. And that didn't start out like that, but here in Germany, German school gets out at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. My dad would pick me up after school, and we would drive 45 minutes into Hanau, where the army base was. And in the car on the ride, we would always listen to Zig Ziglar, the sales tapes. My dad had a whole series of Zig Ziglar. So here I am, an 11-year-old kid listening to Zig Ziglar every day in the car, right? We
Perfect.
would get into Hanau, And I remember the very first day that my dad wanted me to go into the housing area. I was 11 years old. He drives me into the housing area. He hands me a stack of lead cards, lets me out on the corner and says, I'll meet you right back here in 2 hours. See how many cards you can get filled out. And I hated, here's the incentive he gave me. He said, for each card you get filled out, I'll pay you $1. And then for anyone any of those leads that buy insurance from me, I'll pay an additional $25 commission. When I was 11, I didn't care about the money. I was frightened. I wanted to be out playing with my friends. I didn't want to be doing this. It was horrible. So he drops me off. I walk into the housing area. I immediately
Did he
meet a
tell
bunch.
you what to say when you got to the people's doors?
The lead card was pretty self-explanatory.
Okay.
It said 9 out of 10 soldiers can get an immediate pay raise by filling this card out. Are you interested in money for college, retirement, investing, life insurance? And then if you filled it out, you got a free brass-plated Social Security card with a little American flag on it. He'd bring back the brass Social Security card when he came back to try to sell them insurance. So basically, I would go there and say, "Hey, would you like to get a free brass-plated Social Security card? And are you interested in any of these things?" And I would hand them the card, right, to read. Well, immediately doors being shut in my face, people saying, "Hey, there's no solicitation allowed. What are you doing here? Get out of the door, kid." Blah 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 blah. So I go back down where I'm supposed to meet my dad 2 hours later. I'll never forget this. Never. My dad pulls up. He looks through the front windshield of the car, and he sees me, and I'm just sobbing, crying. Right. So he just has this disappointed look on his face. And he waves me back into the car. And as soon as I get back in the car, I knew he wasn't happy because he called me by my middle name. So he would only use my middle name when he was upset. And he goes, "What's the problem, Brandon?" I go, "I hate this. This is horrible. People screamed at me. They were yelling at me. They were shutting the door in my face." He's like, "Ah." So we left the housing area. Directly across the street was a U.S. Army base. We go onto the Army base. We go to the burger bar. He buys me a hamburger and a soda. And while we're sitting there, my dad says to me, he goes, "Hey, Sean," he goes, "did I ever tell you about this casino where you can go and you can place a bet, and if you don't win the bet, you don't lose any money, but if you win the bet, you win money?" And I go, "No." I go, "Dad, that doesn't exist." He goes, "No, no, it's a real place." I go, "Dad, it doesn't exist." And he goes, "No, no, no, it's a real place, and even kids can go there." I go, "No, now I know you're not telling the truth." I go, "There's no casino that kids can go to." He goes, "Son, I'm telling you, there's a casino you can go, you can place bets, and if you don't lose, you don't lose any money. But if you win money, and kids can go." I go, "Dad, that's crazy." I said, "Because if that were true," I go, "everybody would go there all day long and just win money." He goes, "Yeah, you would think so." But they don't." And I go, "Well, why don't they?" He goes, "Well, because," he goes, "they're afraid." They're afraid if they lose, they're gonna feel embarrassed. I go, "Well, why feel embarrassed? Just keep placing bets until you win." He goes, "Yeah." I guess that's right. He goes, "You think you might like to go to this casino sometime?" So I said to him, "Yeah, sure. I'm 11. I'm like, "Yeah, let's go to a casino." And he goes, "Well, would you like to go now?" And I go, right now?" And he goes, "Yeah." And I go, "Okay." So we walk out, we get in the car, we drive off the Army base, and he drives me right back into the housing area. I go, "Whoa, whoa, what are we doing?" He goes, I go, "This isn't the casino." My dad goes, "No, no, no, son." He goes, "This is the casino." And I go, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Every time you walk in there and you knock on a door, you're placing a bet that you're going to be able to get them to fill that card out. And if you win the bet," he goes, "you get paid $1." And he goes, "and if I sell them insurance, you get paid 25." He goes, "But if they don't fill the card out, you don't lose any money." He goes, "But here's the beautiful thing about this. The better you get at what you say, you get to increase your odds of winning the bet." I go, "Oh, interesting." He goes, "Yeah, so it's a casino." I go, "Oh, so it's a casino." I go, "Yeah." I go, "All right." So I get out of the car, walk back into the housing area, start knocking on doors. 2 hours later, meet my dad at that same corner. He pulls up, he looks through the front windshield. This time he sees me smiling ear to ear. He waves me into the car. I get in the car and he goes, "So how did you do in the casino, son?" And I go, "Well, Dad," I won 27 bets, and I handed him 27 lead cards I got filled out. He goes, "Wow, that's amazing." He goes, "How did you do it?" I said, "Well, the very first one that I went to, I knocked on the door. When the lady came out, I just said, 'Hey,' I go, 'everyone's going to be getting these free brass plated Social Security cards. I assume you're going to want to get one as well.' and all you got to do is fill this card out. Are you going to want to get one? She goes, of course I want to get one. So she filled the card out. Then I went to the neighbor and I said, Sharon just got one of these for free, and I'm pretty sure everyone in the building is going to get one. Would you like to get one too? Well, of course I want one. So that's how I got them all filled out. So years later, what I realized that my dad must have had to play this game in his mind in order to overcome the fear of rejection. But what I realized later was that my dad didn't fully understand how it all worked. And so I did some research, and here's what I found out. I found out that the fear of rejection, the thing that holds most of us back from achieving the real accomplishments in life and really going after our big dreams and really going and really turning this life into something, finding your life's purpose and really doing something gigantic, usually is stopped because of the fear of rejection. And the thing is that the fear of rejection is a real thing. I mean, it turns out that the fear of rejection is hardwired into your brain in the same location where we physically feel pain. And the reason why is because through evolution, if you go way back, if you go way, way back to when we were living in little tribes, turns out that if you did something stupid and the tribe kicked you out, you had a pretty good chance of getting eaten by an animal or killed by another tribe. So Mother Nature figured out, like, hey, I got to hardwire this somewhere in this dum-dum's brain so that they know to stay within their parameters and to not piss everybody off and get kicked out. So they build in this real healthy fear of rejection. But it also turns out that we have this reward system in our brain where endorphins are released. And it turns out that as we learn something new, as we're going towards a goal, right? Everyone thinks that achieving the goal is where the most endorphins are released, but it turns out once you achieve your goal, yes, you feel good and there's endorphins that are released. But it turns out that the journey on our way to the goal, as we're learning new things, that's when the endorphins are really released because we're set up in the reward system that we enjoy learning, right? Because that's part of our survival as well. So what I've done is I've moved the fear of rejection and I've moved it over to the part of my brain in the reward center. I don't view rejection anymore as I don't view it as like a rejection. The way I view this is I view these as learning opportunities. So every time I go out to do something, and if someone's saying no to me, I try to learn from that as to why, and then I incorporate that to go further. And so each time I feel good. So now I realize that one of my superpowers in life that's propelled me and allowed me to go do a bunch of crazy, cool things in my lifetime has been removing the fear of rejection. And it all goes back to that experience when I was 11. And I feel like any of your listeners can take that and they can use that same story because it really works and it's true that if you can stop viewing it as rejection and view it as a learning opportunity and view it as you placing a bet, and that the better you get at placing those bets, you're going to win. And you wind up, if you don't give up and you keep going back, you're going to win.
Right. Well, this is something that I talk to my clients about as a life coach and a hypnotist, because I call it the critter brain. It is the part of your brain that is trying to keep you safe because it doesn't like change. It doesn't care if you are immersed in total mediocrity and you're miserable as hell, but that's what it knows. And so just like the fitting in and not pissing off the caveman and being thrown out, it's the same thing as when you're in this place of whatever it is that you swear up and down you want to get rid of or you want to change. Our critter brain just starts saying, well, I don't know, that old saying, the devil you know better than the devil you don't know. And it will do all kinds of things to convince you. So I tell my clients, I haven't never heard the casino thing, so that's a wonderful thing. I just tell them, let's pretend we're playing a game. And part of this game is let's see how we can make this work. And then we work out, whatever the parameters are. But because a lot of times if I can help my clients reframe it, like you just did, just as it's a game that we're just trying to discover how we can bridge this gap and make this fun instead of feeling like it's life or death, that it just becomes an adventure instead of something we're being forced to do. And so it's just that's just perfect. I love the amazing stuff that your dad taught you through
Oh
that,
yeah.
because a lot of people don't get that kind of feedback right away of how to turn it around. So that's brilliant.
Yeah, and I also learned that like life some has this crazy way of preparing us for things that are coming up around a corner that we can't see.
Yeah.
So for example, there's probably people that are listening to this podcast today, and they're going to be able to learn some of these lessons, and they don't necessarily know why they're learning these lessons right now, but then up around the corner, all of a sudden, they're going to know how to deal with something that they wouldn't have known how to deal with otherwise, and they can use some of the experiences you and I are speaking about as their way of dealing with it. I learned that has happened throughout my entire life. Even though I had this incredible, unusual childhood growing up in Germany, my dad was this really interesting man. My parents then once again broke up when I was 16, and they actually each went their own separate ways with their individual. My dad had a new girlfriend, my mom had a boyfriend, and they both left. And I wound up getting abandoned in Germany at 16.
Did you
And
speak German at that point?
yeah, at that point, I'd been in
Okay.
German school since I was 10, so I
Yeah.
spoke German. I got a job driving a forklift at night at 16 years old, and I rented an apartment in this guy's attic. He had like one of these little attic apartments. I rented an apartment. I drove a forklift at night, and I finished high school during the day, living on my own at 16. So I feel like all those days of listening to Zig Ziglar and all his motivation and all the sales stuff, it really gave me like a bunch of survival skills. And I had another really cool experience, and I want to, and the reason why I bring it up is because you said a key word that I wrote down when you said it, which was reframing, because it's amazing how powerful it is to reframe things. You can have an immediate paradigm shift in your brain once you reframe it. You can go from not being able to accomplish something to being able to excel at something by just simply reframing how you think about it in your mind. And I had that experience when I was 15. I loved to ski, and because my dad was one of these guys who sometimes had money and sometimes we were broke, but he had no steady income. I couldn't actually afford to be on the local ski team in my town because you had to be able to buy nice skis and aerodynamic suits, and you had to pay for trips and all this stuff. But they had room on the ski team for one person that was on the sponsorship, it was like a charity for one child,
Right.
and I got that, and I got to be on
Scholarship
the
kind of thing would be what we'd call it here.
yeah, so I got to be on the scholarship, and so I got to be on the scholarship. I got to go to the races. I got to ski. I loved it, but I didn't. But all the other kids had like the coolest skis. They had aerodynamic suits. They got training camps. They got one-on-one coaching, special clinics. Because I was on the scholarship, what I got was I had rental skis, rental boots, rental poles. I wore sweatpants and an oversized jacket. There was no aerodynamic anything, but I didn't care. I was so happy just to be on the ski team and to be able to go ski on the weekends that I had no sense that I was ever going to win anything, but I just loved being there and doing it. Well, when I was 15, my church youth group took a ski trip to Switzerland. That sounds exotic, but it was only 2 hours from where I lived. So we went to Wengen, Switzerland, and while we were there, all the kids that were in my youth group didn't know how to ski. So they were off taking ski lessons. I was skiing by myself because by this point I was a good skier. So I remember I'm flying down this in Bingen, Switzerland. I'm flying down this black diamond. I got my headset on. It's 1985. I'm listening to Van Halen. I'm just like going down this mountain like a bat out of hell. And at one point I remember passing somebody, but I didn't pay attention. I get down to the bottom, and as I get down to the bottom, I'm leaning over my poles trying to catch my breath, and I hear someone yelling, "Hey, hey, hey, you, hey, hey!" And so I take my headphone off, and I look around, and this guy's going, "Hey, hey, you!" And I go, "Yeah, is something wrong? You talking to me?" And he goes, "Hey, are you American?" And I go, "Yeah, I'm American." He goes, "Oh, wow." He goes, "Where are you from?" And I go, "Well, I live in Germany." He goes, "You live in Germany?" I go, "Yeah, my dad sells life insurance." And he's like, "What?" He goes, "Well, that's a crazy story." And he goes, "Are you here for the Laberhorn?" And I go, "The Laberhorn?" I go, "I don't even know what Laberhorn is." I go, "I'm here with my church youth group." He goes, "What?" I go, "Yeah, I'm here with my youth group." He goes, "Oh, so you're not here to race in the Laberhorn?" I go, "Oh, no." He goes, "Well, you should race, man." And I go, oh, I do race. He goes, well, that makes sense. He goes, how many races have you won? I said, oh, I haven't won any races. I got these rental skis and rental poles and boots and, and he's like, whoa, 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 whoa. He goes, hey, stop. And I go, what? He goes, stop. And I go, what? He goes, just shut up. I go, I was like taken back, like, shut up. What? He goes, listen, kid. He goes, get on the chairlift with me. Because he asked me, he goes, how old was that? I go, I'm about to turn 15. He goes, get on the chairlift with me right up the mountain. I go, okay. So I get on the chairlift, and this guy says to me, he goes, hey, he goes, do you know who Billy the Kid is? I go, the cowboy? He goes, no, man. He goes, let me ask you something. He goes, did you watch the Winter Olympics in Sarajevo last winter? I go, yes, I did. An American finally won the downhill and got a gold medal. He goes, yeah, that's right. He goes, Bill Johnson. I go, yes, Bill Johnson. He goes, that's me. I'm Bill Johnson, Billy the Kid. I go, oh, that's right, you are. You're Bill Johnson. You won a gold medal. And he goes, yes. And he goes, and kid, I want you to know something. When I skied up to you, he goes, I wasn't skiing up to you to become friends. He goes, I don't need any more friends. He goes, I saw you flying down that mountain. And he goes, I thought I got to race this guy in the World Cup tomorrow. He goes, I wanted to get in your head. I go, really? He goes, yeah, man. He goes, you're that good. He goes, so here's what I want you to do. He goes, I want you to stop selling yourself on why you can't win. He goes, and I want you to start selling yourself on all the reasons why you can't lose. He goes, here's the secret. He goes, what you sell yourself on and what you buy and what you believe is what you will project and sell to the world and what other people will buy about you. I go, wow. He goes, yes, let me say it one more time. What you buy and believe and sell to yourself, you will project to the world and they will believe about you. So if you tell yourself you have nothing to lose and that you have everything to gain and that you have all the skills that it takes, and if you believe that with all your heart and you project that you're a winner, other people will believe it as well. 3 months later in Garmisch, Germany, I won the 2 gold medals at the European Junior Men's Championships. I had never won
Nice.
a medal in my life. And after that, the coach on my team bought me brand new skis, got me a new aerodynamic suit. I got a sponsorship from Kodak. I was on a billboard. Like the whole thing in my brain changed.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was just a year later that I found myself living on my own. And it was that incredible experience at 15 and that one at 11, I think that helped me carry through and not go down a bad path at such a young age, but instead stay focused and to go on to have an incredible life. And it was those 2 lessons that really, I think, like just grabbed me and helped propel me forward.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. And it brings up something for me, is that I had somebody was talking to me one time and it was about the polarity of life and things.
Yeah.
So, if there's an up, there's a down,
Yes.
and if there's a cold, there's a hot.
Yeah.
So whatever you're experiencing, there's the polar opposite there. So if you're having a catastrophe in your life, the polar opposite is an amazing life, and you can just start focusing on the polarity of it because it exists there too. You just have to be able to envision it and become part of it. And
Yes.
so the thing that is really cool to me about that too, it's like when you buy a car that you never see on the road ever, and as soon as you buy that car, suddenly you see them everywhere
Yes.
because you could all of a sudden it's
Yep.
in your line of vision.
Yes.
And we get inundated with millions of bits of information all the time, and we
Yep.
only really see focus on about 2,000 of them, and we can't
Yep.
even really comprehend all of those because we would go crazy if we noticed every single thing. And so
Yep.
it's the same kind of thing. You tell yourself that you're good at something and that you know enough and all these things that you can do, then that becomes the it's almost like you're going down that ski hill to
Yep.
that little place. And so I love this. I love this because it's like you keep reminding me of things that that I say or people have said to me.
Yeah.
It's amazing stuff. And you know, and I get caught up sometimes when somebody says to me, well, life's hard and they start, saying all these things, and it's like you could just feel that just draining you when they even say it. And it's like, stop saying that, because that's when it becomes true.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so big two things that you said that I'd like to circle back to.
Sure.
One is so that same thing with that car. I call that the my yellow bug analogy.
Mm-hmm.
And so here's the thing is that so it's the same exact thing. But what I believe is that once someone can really visualize the dream or the goal of where they want to go and they know what it is. See, the thing is that I believe that opportunities to take you to wherever you want to go in life are passing us by every day. And you just
Yeah.
don't see it. You don't recognize them because you have no way of attaching value to those opportunities. But once you know where it is you want to go, and once you have a goal of where you want to arrive or a big giant dream, once that's clear in your mind and you can actually visualize it and see it, now all of a sudden those opportunities become into focus and you see them everywhere. And the key is to grab them and to run with them. So I use the yellow bug analogy. It's in the same thing. It's like a person buys a brand new Volkswagen Bug. It's bright yellow. You get out on the freeway, and all of a sudden you go, "There's another yellow bug. There's another. There's another one. There's another." And those yellow bugs have been passing you on the freeway every single day. You just never noticed them because they held no meaning to you. There was no
Right.
attachment. Now you own one. So it's like once you own a dream, then you will be able to see those opportunities that are out there that are going to lead you to your dream. So I 100% agree with that, and I use that, and I tell people that all the time. So that's powerful, and I use
Yeah.
that in my own life. Then the other thing that I think that you touched on, which is um, some of my some of our most powerful lessons that we learn in life are actually learned in the hardest points of our life in through adversity. It's not when you're on top of the world. You're not learning those lessons when everything's going great and everything's just going your way, and it's the payoff. It's not in the peaks. It's down in those valleys. And in those valleys, some of the most incredible lessons are learned. And you can go back sometimes and you could think to yourself, why am I going through this? Why is it so tough? Why is it so horrible? But you get out the other side and you look back and you go, oh, I would have never been able to do this had I not managed to get through this and learned this lesson that got me here. So whenever those valleys are coming or whenever those adversities come into my life, I think, okay, this is it. This is a learning opportunity, and those endorphins start to kick in. So I'm not dealing with those down valleys in the same way that a lot of other people do, because I've conditioned myself to realize, no, that's when all the learning's happening. This is going to be good. There's going to be lots, and I'm always looking for the lessons of what I'm going through.
Yeah, me
Sometimes they're not
too.
always obvious until you
Yeah.
get through the other side. But you're right. It is, again, it's mental reframing, which
Yeah.
is powerful.
Yeah. And I think it's Zig Ziglar that says, don't wish things were easier, wish you were better.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
Good
yeah,
one.
yeah.
Yes.
And I love that. I love that. And,
Yeah.
and it's like I tell people all the time, and a lot of times on podcasts, because I'm talking to coaches and different people, and it's like that's what people hire us for, is to be able to be the one up here looking down at your little map of what you've got going on, and we can see this hurdle that you just hit. We can help you to redirect and move and create new thought patterns around something that's going on to help
Yeah.
you get to where you want to go. Because most of the time, well, I would say all the time, we can't figure out what we're going to do when we're in the situation. And
Mm,
so sometimes it takes somebody standing out here that can kind of look it over, almost like they're up above us and seeing all the stuff that's going on. And they say, yeah, if you go up here and you take a right, man, in 6 months, you are going to be blown away with how different
mm,
your life's going to be. But
yeah.
that's, I think, what we do as coaches, and just to be able to give them a little bit of a push in the right direction instead of
Yeah.
letting them kind of sit here and woes me kind of stuff.
Yeah, I agree. I also believe that if people are able to put themselves out there and take a risk and step into the unknown with just believing that like just only holding on to the fact that like they're going to be okay, that things are going to be okay. I don't know how this is going to turn out. I don't know how to get from A to B. I'm not quite, I don't know what that path looks like, but the right people are going to come into my life at the right time. And I'm going to, and if I'm meant to achieve this, if I'm meant to be there, it's going to happen, you know?
Yeah.
Um, I had this wonderful experience. I could tell you about it. It was when I was 19. I was in the Army. I was stationed in Fort Devens, Massachusetts, right outside of Boston. And I was going through a military intelligence training school there. And we had a long weekend. And there was an older sergeant that was in my class. And he was an E6. I was an E3 at the time. Normally, you don't talk to each other, but in class, it's allowed, right? So he says to me, he goes, "Hey, Private Kelly," he goes, "Are you going anywhere for the long weekend?" I said, "No, I don't have any plans. I don't have any friends or family here." And he goes, "Do you want to play an entrepreneur game with me?" And I go, um, I didn't even know what entrepreneur meant. I was 19. I go, I don't even know what you're asking me right now. He goes, "Well," he goes, "it's kind of like a business game." He goes, "What we'll do is you and I will leave the barracks for the long weekend on Friday morning, and we'll stay out. We won't come back until Monday night. We'll be gone Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and we'll just leave with just our driver's license and the clothes we're wearing on our back, and we'll see how much money we can make." I go, "Whoa." I go, "How are we going to eat?" He goes, "Yeah, now you're getting it." I go, "No, no, 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 no." I go, "Let me ask something." I go, "Where are we going to sleep?" He goes, "Yeah, now you're getting." I go, "No, I don't think I am getting it." I go, I don't understand." But this guy was special forces, and he had this crazy confidence, and he wanted to get out of the Army and become an entrepreneur. And so his enthusiasm was just so strong. And I thought, okay, all right, what the hell? I have nothing else going on. Let's do it. So that Friday morning, we got out and we went dumpster diving. That was our first idea because in Massachusetts, cans and bottles are worth 10 cents. So we filled up trash bags, cans and bottles. We cashed those in. We took the money. We hired a guy in our unit who had a Volkswagen Bug. He took us to more dumpsters. We found someone who'd thrown away a whole collection of CDs. Someone had thrown away a bunch of Army uniforms. We found more cans, bottles. We took the Army uniforms to the Army Navy store, sold them. We took the CDs to the music store, we sold them. We took the cans and bottles, we cashed those in. We took that money, we bought a Polaroid camera, 2 train tickets. We went into Boston. We stood out front of the Cheers bar. This is 1989. Nobody had cell phones, nobody had cameras. And we charged $5 for people to pose in front of the Cheers sign and to take their picture. And that was our first money maker. I would run down to the drugstore, I'd buy more film, and we stood out there until the bar closed at 1 a.m. Then we went to a Dunkin' Donuts, bought a cup of coffee, asked the lady, we told her what we were doing, asked her if we could sleep in the booth. She goes, "I don't care." Woke up the next morning, went through the classified ads. We found we were looking for a way to reinvest the money. We found a guy who had a whole storage unit full of t-shirts that say "I Heart Boston." And basically he was blowing them out for $1 a piece, but he wanted you to buy the whole storage unit. So we took a cab over there. We bought as many as we could shove into the cab. The cab took us back by the Cheers bar. There was a church. We put all the t-shirts into a bush in like bags inside the bushes. We stood out in front of that Cheers bar all weekend long on the long weekend, selling t-shirts, taking pictures. And by the end of the weekend, we had made $3,500 after paying for our meals, train tickets, buying the shirts, everything. We made
Nice.
3,500 bucks, 1750 a piece. And what that taught me was several different lessons. One was I could lose everything. I realized in my life I could lose everything, but as long as I had my health, I could get out there and hustle and get my life restarted. But number two, it was like stepping into that unknown, that void. Like we had no idea when I agreed to do that. We had no idea there would be a Polaroid camera. We had no idea we were going to go to the Cheers bar. We just had to figure it out as we went along, and our back was against the wall because we needed to eat. We,
Mhm.
you know what I mean? Like it was winter time in Massachusetts. It was cold. So we had to eat. We had to try to stay warm. We had to do all these things. And so yeah, it was a really powerful lesson. So I look back at that one lesson in my life, and it made me realize that I'm like, wow, as long as I had my health, as long as you're willing to just get out there and step into the unknown, you can get creative and just figure it out. That's just exciting stuff for me. And I recommend anyone that's an entrepreneur, anyone that wants to prove to themselves they should go give it a try. Just take a weekend and just do it. Just walk out of your house with your driver's license and don't come back until Sunday night. Leave like on a Saturday morning and say, I'm not coming back till Sunday night, and I'm not taking any money with me. I'm not taking my phone, nothing. I'm just going to go see how much money I can make starting from scratch. It's powerful.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Well, let me ask you a question. You know, with all the stuff that you dealt with your dad being the feast and the famine,
Mm.
kind of thing, and with all these different little things that you went through, did you ever have that place where you had anxiety about the famine part, afraid that your
Oh yeah.
feast part wasn't going to last long enough?
Oh yeah, I think it's one of the reasons why I was so driven to becoming successful and wanting to get out and achieve a lot of things in life and to and financially build up a blanket of security was because yeah, of course. I mean, the abandonment at such a young age, the when
So,
okay, so
well, let me stop you just a second.
mm,
Just come to my mind the abandonment time that you had. So,
yeah.
did you have a relationship with your parents later?
Yes, I did. And
Yeah.
I forgave both my parents for what happened. And the reason why was I realized life is short. Um, I did happen to go to Iraq and fight in combat and had some close calls and realized I'm living on borrowed time. And so I thought it really puts into perspective like what is and isn't important. My
Hmm.
parents, I don't think that they were trying to be malicious at the time. I think my parents thought, he's going to be fine. They were just kind of doing their thing. I did forgive them and I did establish a relationship with them. I'm so glad that I did because I lost my father in 2014. And so I'm glad that we were able to be reestablished and become friends and still do lots of things together. And the same with my mother, who's still alive. So, and as you get older, you realize people make decisions and, you think that your parents are these wonderful, you think your parents are adults who have it all figured out. They don't have it figured out. They're just kind of going through this thing called life as well, making their own mistakes. Um, Here's the thing. When I was a kid, when we had the famine part, which was feast or famine, either my dad got a lot of commission checks and life was great and we were doing road trips, or the famine part was our water would get shut off, our electricity would get shut off, our telephone would get shut off, our landlord would give us eviction notices, the bank would, talk about taking the car back, all these different things. So in Germany, you can't just like pick up the phone and get your electricity turned back on. If you had your electricity turned off because you didn't pay your bill, you had to physically go to the electric department and go in and explain yourself and get a lecture and then pay a bigger deposit to get it turned back on. Well, so we would have to go to the electric company, the phone company. We have to do all these things. And when I was 11, 12, 13, 14 years old, and my parents didn't speak a word of German. I was the one that spoke German. I was the one that
Mm,
had gone to German school and spoke German. So I was the one that got all these lectures about being irresponsible and how horrible it was. Now, it was meant for my father, but I would translate what they would say. And my dad's response would be like, he would just blow them off. He would say crazy stuff like, you tell him we won the war, or stuff like that. I mean, it was crazy. And so like he had it never seeped into my dad's brain, but it did me. Like I
yeah.
heard all of these lectures. To this day, I've got an incredible credit score, like pretty close to 850, like 840, where one almost maxed out because I would never think of not paying a bill on time. I would not think of ever having my electricity or my water or utilities. That would just never enter my mind because I got lectured so much as a kid. So again, here was this horrible experience being lectured by adults by something that I didn't even do or was responsible for. But later in life, those became extremely valuable lessons for me. It just like the same way Zig Ziglar got into my brain, all those lectures about how irresponsible it is to not pay your bills seeped in as well, and I got a lot of benefit from it. But it was traumatic at the time.
Yeah, yeah, I would think so. Well, I know you were in the middle of a thought before I interrupted you. Do you remember what it was?
No, but that's
No?
okay. We're having a great conversation here.
Okay, okay. Well, so I kind of want to go and let's go back up. You had said one of the things you did tell me was that you had a very good business, and then when the world shut down and COVID happened, you were
Hmm.
just all of a sudden you were thrown into that famine type of experience. So can you just share a
Yes.
little bit about that?
Now that part was actually traumatic, even though I've got a positive outlook on everything, because I think the pandemic was brutal for a lot of people. I noticed that there was feast or famine during the pandemic. There was either people who they were in a field that just took off, like if you worked in tech or if you worked in real estate or if you there's certain sectors where they had never made so much money in their life. It just
Yeah.
like it was like this rush. And then there were people like myself who lost everything. My wife and I, it had been our 30th wedding anniversary that was coming up. And so we had planned a 4 month trip around the world, starting in London, and we were going to work our way all the way around the world to Tokyo. And it just so happened that that was the fall of 2019. And we happened to be in Hong Kong watching TV as the leak or as the thing started to first appear in Wuhan. They were showing on the news in Hong Kong that in Wuhan they were taking trucks full of dirt and they were covering the ring road so no one could leave the city by car. They were shutting down the train stations, but they were still allowing international flights to leave Wuhan to Europe and the US. So my wife and I looked at each other and we're like, this is crazy. Like, whatever this is, it's crazy. Like the fact that they're putting dirt so no one can leave the city, but the fact that they're allowing international flights to leave, we're like, what is that? Like that doesn't make any sense at all. We're like, well, we didn't know what was about to happen, but we knew it wasn't good. And we
Hmm.
knew long before everybody else. We knew like in early January. And um, so we ended up getting to Tokyo a couple weeks later, and we were supposed to spend another month traveling around Japan. We bought Eurail or Japan rail passes. But we looked at each other and I told my wife, I said, you know what? I have a feeling I'm going to lose my business over this and we might have to sell the house. I go, we should just go home right now and get prepared for that. And she goes, yeah, I agree. So we got on an early flight, a month early, flew back to California, went to our house. I tried to call friends and family to tell and warn them, but immediately I was met with people going, hey, are you okay? We're going to pray for you. Like they thought I was crazy because I'm like, hey, this is coming. It's going to destroy everything. Go get groceries, go buy masks. And my cousins and stuff, they're like, we're going to pray for you. Are you all right?
Yeah.
So then I
So
realized,
you were
oh,
one of those alarmists everybody talked about.
yeah. So then basically I realized, oh, I can't tell people because they're just going to think I'm crazy. I can only take care of us. So we got the groceries, we got the masks, we got prepared, and we put our house on the market because I anticipated that I was probably going to lose all my business. Because what I was doing at the time, and which I still do, is raise money for nonprofits as an auctioneer. I do the big galas for children's hospitals and for all kinds of private schools and nonprofits. I've raised over $500 million as a gala auctioneer. These big functions where 800,000 people will come and I'm on stage auctioning off elaborate travel packages or just getting people to give pure donations by raising their hand and committing at different levels. So sure enough, March rolled around of 2020, and within 72 hours, all 32 of my galas that year all canceled within 3 days. And it was not surprising, but also surprising. Like I
Yeah.
had
You
came home
wanted
prepared.
it to happen like we're so wrong. This is not coming,
Yes, yes,
where it's, that's it's let's take the effort and we're going to do all this and
yes.
pray that it doesn't happen.
Exactly. And I was thinking that maybe by being as proactive as I was and thinking worst case scenario, that the worst case scenario wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
But it did happen. And so we ended up selling our home because, besides a mortgage and besides like, California property taxes, which were outrageous, I think it was $8,500 a year for my property tax. I was in a fire zone, so $8,500 a year for fire insurance. So that's 17 grand a year just to wake up each morning, just to open your
Wow.
eyes, and then mortgages and bills and stuff. So we thought, okay, we got to do this. So we sold our home and we got out of California, and we took the equity, and when it came to Arizona, and paid cash for a house so that we could like not have to not have anything on our shoulders, and to just kind of eliminate all those expenses. And because we didn't know how long it was going to last. And it ended up lasting longer than I thought it was going to last. And to be honest with you, here we are, 2024, and I think I have about only 14 auctions lined up for this year. So here I am 4 years later, and I'm not even halfway back to where I was that I had lined up originally for 2020. So, but that's life. Life will throw you these curveballs, but also had the charity auction business continued the way it was continuing. And my TV show had just ended a couple of years before that. Had either one of those two things happened, where I was maybe another season of the TV show, or had I just continued to grow the charity auction business, I wouldn't have stopped and looked around. And I'm so glad that I did, because it forced a serious pause button to be hit in my life. And it made me realize, wow, okay, I've been helping a lot of these nonprofits raise incredible amounts of money, which is very rewarding. And I love it. And I'll probably do this for the rest of my life. But at the same time, I could probably help a lot of people achieve a big, gigantic dream or a goal by showing them how I did it. And so the financial rewards aren't going to be the same. But I'll tell you, it feels incredible when I'm collecting these stories of friends that I've helped. I shared the one about Jimmy O Yang, and he's gone on to become a big movie star. I have a few other friends that I've kind of walked through this process and helped them just change their lives. And even though I don't see a big financial reward or any financial reward from it, I get like my heart is full,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I will say, when you help somebody, you deserve some financial gain from it, but the thing
Sure.
that feels the most amazing is the satisfaction of knowing that you have done something that is going to ripple out into the world. So
That's right.
by changing that one person's life, they in turn have created a ripple effect of their own that you started. And
Yeah.
so it just becomes like, and I'll be honest, one of the things I've always said was that I did not want to leave this earth without having made a big enough difference,
Yes.
because I selfishly wanted to be remembered. And so a lot of times I thought, well, if I die tomorrow, will anybody remember me now?
Mm.
And so then it kind of puts that in you a little bit more. Well, maybe not. So who do I have to help? How do I need to show up so that I will be remembered in a good
Mm.
way?
Mhm.
Um, and my sister reminded me of that one time. She said, there's people that get murdered all the time and people remember them because it was horrific. I said, okay, I'll just change the way I say it now. it's, I want it to happen in a good way. Um, but it's amazing, as you're telling these stories that,
Mm.
and how good it feels. And I can see it in your face, and the energy
Mm.
that you exude from it. It's got to just feel so electrifying, kind of, with how that just surges through you, the satisfaction and pleasure of being able to do that.
Yeah, it does. I'll tell you a valuable lesson that I learned as a fundraising auctioneer. Early on, I used to think, wow, I'm really good at this, and I would give myself a lot of credit and pat myself on the back for it. And the truth of the matter is, I worked very hard to learn techniques and how to become really good at it. And one of the things that I help nonprofits do is, if they get stuck at a plateau, let's say that their gala has been raising $500,000 for like the last 6 years. I'll come in and blast them through and get them to the next level. Like, I took Credit Union for Kids in Southern California. They've been stuck at around 500,000 for like 8 or 9 years, and they raised money for children's hospitals. So I came in and I took them to 1.5 million. I have the skills to do that. And I used to pat myself on the back and go, wow, look at how good I am. But then I realized at one point, and this is when I got really good, is when I realized that, like, I'm a conduit. I'm a vessel. and it's not necessarily me doing this, it's me being on stage, and you have a room full of people who have it in their heart to want to help this incredible cause. They need to be motivated to that next level to give much more money than they've ever given. They need to feel like they're a part of a miracle, and they need to like stretch or get caught up in the moment and commit themselves much bigger than they've ever committed before. And I realize that I now, before I go on stage, I close my eyes, I envision an incredibly successful night. And I also say a small prayer, and I just say, okay, if this organization's meant to have this money, use me. Let's do this. Let me be the conduit. Let me be the vessel that this gets channeled through. And I get to, and when you are that vessel and that conduit, you get to feel the buzz and the excitement and how awesome it is. But at the end of the day, you have to realize that you've been given the opportunity to be placed in this position, but it's not, don't ever think that it's just all you. It's
Right.
there's a much bigger power force that behind all of this, and you are so lucky that you get to play a part of it. And so I've come to the realize that I get to play this incredible role, and I get to have this incredible experience. And I don't know how much longer it gets to last, but every time I do it, I'm aware of the fact that now this isn't just me, it's me plus the Almighty, just like, yeah, I get to be there and be a part of this whole thing. And I witness miracles happen all the time when I do these charity auctions. Like I'll have like an organization that's like really short on their funding, and they're doing some incredible work with it. They don't know where the money's going to come from. And then magically that night, it just comes out of the room, or there's someone who steps up and gives an incredible, and then they'll come to me afterwards and they'll go, I didn't even plan on doing that, but there's something that just you got me. And I'm thinking, I didn't get you, but whatever that power was got you,
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's cool. It's really cool.
Yeah, well, one of the prayer that I say every morning before I start my day, it's
Yeah.
that God, I'm here to honor you and just put me in front of whoever I need to serve in whatever capacity that is.
Mm,
Because sometimes you don't know, and sometimes it's the simplest thing is like going to the grocery store and speaking to the cashier, using their name and smiling, and you've just
yeah.
done something for them, you know? Um, and it makes me think of, I don't know if you remember this. This is a Zig Ziglar thing too. I believe it's Zig Ziglar that does it. Who's kicking the cat? Do you remember that?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, yeah. Because
Can
it's,
you remind me?
yeah, well, my version of it, because I never can quite quote him directly, it's
Mm,
that this guy has been having a horrible, horrible day. He had a fight with his wife, his kids weren't doing the thing. He
yes.
got caught in traffic, all these things
Yes.
happen, and he gets to work and it just goes down the line. So he gets
Yep.
screams and yells at the guy under him, who in turn goes and screams at all the people that he's working with. And then he goes home. One of those guys goes home and screams and yells at his wife. His wife yells at the kid, and the kid walks outside and kicks the cat. So he
Yes.
says that first guy, if he just went to their house and kicked the cat, it would have eliminated all the stuff.
That's
And
right.
I love that because it is
Yes.
the way things happen. You can create a ripple effect that's amazing, or you can go kick the cat. Either
Yes.
one. Yeah, I love Zig
I,
Ziglar. Can you tell?
I do too. That's actually from his series called See You at the Top.
Yes, it
And
is. It is.
yeah, that's a good one. I
Yeah,
love that one.
yeah, I
That's
do
great.
too.
Yeah, and so yeah, there's so much power in when you tell those stories, like from Zig Ziglar's stories, or all these different motivational speakers or sales trainers or whatever. There's so many wonderful lessons, and you hear these stories and then it sticks in your head, right? And
Yeah,
you can laugh about it. And I enjoy always, that's one of the reasons I think I always enjoyed Zig Ziglar's, because he was so funny as well, even
yeah,
though he
yeah,
came across like a Southern Baptist preacher. He also had such a great sense of humor, and humor is something that's always resonated with me as well because I had fallen in love with stand-up comedy as a kid. I saw Robin Williams on TV doing some stand-up or something, and I just thought, oh my goodness, look at this! This is awesome. So later in life, I became a stand-up comedian. I did stand-up comedy for 20 years, and oddly enough, full circle, crazy story. Robin Williams' manager, Larry Bresner, who discovered Robin Williams and managed Robin his entire career. Larry Bresner managed Robin Williams, Billy Crystal, Steve Martin, Martin Short, and Bette Midler. Those were his 5 clients.
Oh, and I love
Right.
all five of those.
Yeah, me too. And randomly, I sat next to Larry Bresner on a plane one day, flying from LA to New York. I see him reading a movie script. I take my headphones off and I go, "What do you do for a living?" I produce movies and I manage comedians." I go, "Oh," I go, "I'm a stand-up comic." I go, "Who are some of your clients?" Or no, I go, "I'm a stand-up comic." And he goes, "Oh, really? What's your name?" I go, "Sean Kelly." He goes, "I've never heard of you." And I said, "Oh, okay." I go, "Well, who are your clients?" And he goes, "Robin Williams, Billy Crystal, Steve Martin, Martin Short, Batman." I go, "Oh, yeah, okay. Well, I've heard of them." And he laughs. And I go, "Well, it was nice meeting you, Larry." He goes back to reading his movie script. I put my headphones on and I think to myself, what am I doing? Like, I got one of the biggest managers in the world sitting right next to me for 5 hours, this flight to New York. So I take my headphones off and I go, "Hey, Larry," I go, "can I just ask you one question?" He goes, "Okay, Sean, what's that?" I go, "Can I just tell you actually what I've managed to do with no agent, no manager, no contacts? And can I get some advice?" He goes, "Okay, what have you managed to do?" I said, "Well," I go, "I created my own television show. It's on True TV. It's called Storage Hunters. I'm the creator of it. I'm the host of the television show. I just got an offer to move to the UK to make a British version of that same show. I created a television show for National Geographic called Church Rescue, where we go in and we fix up churches and we help save churches." And and I go and I do stand-up comedy. And he goes, "Wait a second." He goes, "You don't have an agent or a manager?" I go, "Nope." And he goes, "You did all of that by yourself?" And I go, "Yep." And he goes, "Okay, yes, we do have things to talk about." So anyway, by the time we get to New York, Larry has agreed to become my manager, but
Nice.
not as a comedian, but as a television producer, as a
Okay.
non-scripted television producer. So I got to work with Larry all the way up until he passed away from cancer, and it was incredible. Like the stories I learned, the lessons I learned, the hundreds of lunches that we went together, and the things he shared with me, and the things he shared with me about Billy's career and about Robin's careers and the ups and the downs, and just seeing how he ran his business and what he did for his clients it was just amazing. And I got that opportunity just because I took my headphones off and I said, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" And I
Yeah.
started with one open-ended question, and that led to one of the greatest experiences of my life. And when Larry passed from cancer, of course, I was devastated because by that point he'd become almost like within the 3 years we were together, he'd become like a father figure. It was amazing. It's like that thing that I
Mm-hmm.
had missed when I turned 16. And there he was, and the lessons he imparted were incredible. So I always say to people, take a risk and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and start a conversation with people and ask an open-ended question and then just listen to what they have to say.
Well, it's kind of like you. Well, one thing I say is there are no accidents. So the fact that was sitting next to you was not an
Mm,
accident. But it's
mm,
almost like, the story of the cars. If you're not open to the possibilities, you would not have even noticed what he was reading. You would
mhm.
definitely have not gotten out of your own head of listening to your whatever you were listening to and being focused on whatever you were doing. But the fact that you're open to things like that and you're almost welcoming new experiences in for this game of life,
Yes.
then that's when those things show up.
Yeah, you're right. And I think also going way back to that thing, talking about like my superpower is not having any fear of rejection. I think a lot of people might be afraid to enter into a conversation with someone like that, with a stranger, and go, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" And then just keep going and going. But like, if you can get that under control, and you can eliminate that fear of rejection, and you can learn to start open-ended conversations where you ask open-ended questions that gets the other person talking, and then you carefully listen. The lessons can be incredible. Not always, but they can
Yeah,
be.
yeah. Well, that's one of the things I help with hypnosis, I will say.
Yeah.
But one of the things that comes to mind as you're saying that is, I think a lot of times people get so anxious about having a conversation with someone they don't know because all they're thinking about is themselves. What is somebody going to be? What are they going to think because I said something? What are, what? But if we can get into a place where we take the focus off of us and we
Mm.
think, everybody wants to tell their story,
Mhm.
everybody, if you genuinely are interested. And so
Mhm.
it's just, pretend you're sitting like you and I are sitting here right now talking. And I said, before we started, I said, let's just pretend we're sitting on my sofa and we're having a cup of coffee and we're talking.
Yep.
And I think if we can look at interactions with people wherever we go in that same vein of, we're just having a conversation. There's no commitment here. There's no angst about whether they listen or they talk or they don't. It's just have a conversation. And I think if we can manage to take it into that place, then it takes a lot of that stress and anxiety over, what's going on. Because let's face it, you can have a conversation with one of your friends sometimes and you
Mm.
love each other and they may not be open to talking at the time. But do you get upset and say, well, I'm not going to ever talk to anybody again? No.
Mm.
You say, well, they're having a bad day. It's okay. And so the same thing happens out in the world.
Yeah, I agree. That's awesome. And you're right. People want, no matter who they are, people want to share their story, and really people are they have a sincere need to be heard and to be understood, and to feel like other people get them, so that they don't feel like they're alone on this journey. And like, this was my experience, and then they find out, wow, there's these other things in common. The other thing too that I found is that some of the most interesting conversations I've had with some people is when I met people who were famous but not famous to me. Like, I didn't know who they were, and I just had like a natural conversation with them, and they were so excited to learn that I didn't know who they were, and they could just have like a
Be
normal.
themselves.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
has happened a couple of times in my life. Once I was at the Biltmore Hotel in Scottsdale, Arizona, and there was this guy sitting on a bench, and I went and sat down next to him. I said, "Hey, how you doing?" And we just started talking a little bit, and then we just had this nice conversation about travel, because I've been to 93 countries. He has traveled, but he really wanted to do more traveling. But he told me that his job kind of prevented him from doing the kind of travel that he wanted, which was international travel. But he did a lot of domestic travel for work and everything. And we talked for like an hour and a half. And then finally, I just said, I go, well, what is it that you do? And he goes, you really don't know who I am, do you? And I go, no, I don't. Turns out he was the head coach of the New York Jets, of a football team, but I'm not a sports fan, so I had
Yeah.
no idea who he was. And he was just telling me what a pleasure it was to just have a normal conversation. And I learned a lot of fascinating things about his life. And probably had I known who he was or been a fan, he would not have opened up.
Yeah.
Another time I was doing a charity auction in San Diego, and I went to introduce this guy. And I didn't know who he was. He was a sports guy, and I mispronounced his name, which is a big mistake. You should always learn how to pronounce someone's name before you go on stage. But his name was LaDainian Tomlinson. And he was like, I think he's like a quarterback for the San Diego Chargers. But I didn't know any of that because I'm not a sports fan. And I called him LaDainian Tomlinson or something like that. And the whole room booed me. There were like 800 fans just booed, because they were like, it was this thing where sports people were serving lunch to the donors, and then
Yeah.
they would autograph a baseball or a football, depending on what they did. So this guy says to me afterwards, he goes, "Hey man," he goes, "do you really not know who I am?" And I go, "No, man." I go, "I don't watch sports." I go, "I'm so sorry. I don't know who you are." He goes, "Oh, that's awesome." He goes, "We should be friends." And then about a couple months later, I'm in Mission Valley in San Diego, and I walk into a CVS drugstore, and this guy says, he goes, "Hey, Sean." He goes, "Sean, what's up?" And I look at him, I go, "Huh?" And he goes, "Dude." He goes, LaDainian. I go, oh, the football player. He goes, yeah, the football player, man. He goes, how are you, dude? And so it's kind of nice. People, it doesn't matter how famous they are. It doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter if it's just the clerk that works at the grocery store. It doesn't matter where they're at in their life. People just want to be heard, and they want to feel like they can have a connection. And
Yeah.
sometimes that connection can be with people that that you would think you would have nothing in common with. Like, you would think that I would have nothing in common with these sports guys because I don't like sports and I don't watch sports. But the truth of the matter is, we could talk about all these other topics that they're interested in talking about that no one else wants to talk to them about.
Right, right. Well, one of the things for sure, if you can become a good listener, you can be the best conversationalist that ever came about.
That's right. That's right. One of the things that I teach, because I teach these three pillar skills, and one of them is how to overcome the fear of rejection. One is how to get a sincere, really sincere self-confidence. But the other thing is sales, because I really believe that you're not going to accomplish all the things you really want to accomplish in life unless you know how to sell. You need to know how to sell your dream to others. You need to know how to persuade others to come along with you on your vision. And that's a big part of selling that people don't realize, is that people always think that selling is about you learning to be able to say things in a way that are very persuasive. The truth of the matter is that selling is actually you only doing about 10% of the speaking. Selling is really about asking the correct open-ended questions and then becoming the best listener ever. I call it active listening, where you
Yeah.
basically grab a pen and a paper. When the other person's speaking, you are jotting down notes and you're just focused on what they're saying. I learned that skill when I worked for military intelligence. We used to listen into the East Germans, and we would intercept their communications, and then we would have to transcribe by hand what they were saying in shorthand. So you really had to focus in on key words and what was going on. And I use that later in my sales, and it's extremely powerful, which is, let that other person speak, ask them the open-ended questions, and then just learn and figure out what it is that they want and what they need, and let them kind of discover that on their own, and then figure out, how can I be of best service to this person and meet those needs, and don't say anything until you've got it figured out in your mind. So just keep asking questions till you go, wait a minute, I think I can help them with this.
Yeah, yeah, perfect. Perfect advice for everybody that's watching or listening. And we have kind of gone over our time, but I'm
Oh,
good with
yes, I
that.
know. It's been
That's
wonderful.
okay.
Thank you.
No, no worries. This has been great. So I want to ask you to just remind everybody how to get involved with your group and different things. And I will share with everybody that when I put this up, and I will have in the description, I will have any links that you want in there. But if
Okay.
you could tell them now, so if they're listening, they can write it down in there if they're not where the link is.
Yeah, listen, if you are interested in trying to go out and accomplish a big dream in your life, if you're interested in like going out and chasing that gigantic dream, the one that almost feels impossible, the one that you're almost afraid to admit to yourself, the one that you definitely wouldn't want to tell your friends and family about because you seems crazy, but you also want to like not be laying on your deathbed someday looking back and going, I wish I had, I should have, I wish I'd done this, I wish I'd done that, I wish I'd taken these risks. If you've gotten to a point in your life where you realize we have one life to live, this is it, and your life's purpose is hanging out there and you haven't gone and done it yet, I created this Facebook group. It's called Do the Big Dream. So if you go to facebook.com/groups/Do the Big Dream, you can join my Facebook group for free. Or if that's too much to remember, all you got to do is go to dothebigdream.com. You'll see my story about my own story about what I did when I was 40. You'll see dozens of pictures of all the different celebrities that I've worked with, and there are multiple links in there that'll take you to my Facebook group. I haven't officially launched the group yet. We're building it up. So if you want to come and join us, you're going to be able to be right at the very beginning. And what I can tell you is that the Facebook group is free. And what I plan on teaching in there are my 3 pillar skills. And then in addition to that, I have a 15-step formula that I have followed to be able to go out and accomplish these cool things in life. So when I went from where I was managing a newspaper to where I decided I wanted to have my own comedy club, which I ran for 8 years, which we didn't even talk about. to where I wanted to become a stand-up comedian, to where I wanted to become an auctioneer, to where I wanted to be on television. I always went back and followed these same 15 steps, and it took me there. And I'm eager to teach you because I want to be able to tell people someday that I helped you achieve your big dream. So that's how you can find me. And if we're kindred spirits and if this resonates with you, come find me and let's do this.
Yes, that sounds perfect. Perfect. So thank you for sharing that. And I want to ask everybody to definitely do me a solid and go ahead and whatever platform you're listening or watching this on to make sure you subscribe, you like, and you share, because we want to be able to make this get out into the public to where Sean's story is seen so much more, along with all the amazing guests that I've had on here up till now. It has been such a pleasure talking with you today, Sean,
Same
and
here.
I look forward to seeing how this group expands and grows over time.
Yes, me too. Anyway, thank you so much for having me on, Vicky. This is awesome.
My pleasure. Everybody, I will see you later.